So I recently finished watching Inside the Manosphere, a Netflix documentary starring Louis Theroux. So the premise here is that Louis Theroux goes around and hangs out with a few influencers, one by one, and just to see if they're the real deal, if they're really how they portray themselves to be, how they create content, why they do what they do. Namely, the ones that appear are HS Tiki Taki, did not know him. Justin Waller, I had heard of him, but I was not too familiar with him. Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit. I was more familiar with him, not so much of a fan, but yeah, I knew who he was. And Sneeko, and I think that's pretty much the main one. Sneeko, I did know him, but again, I'm not much of a fan. I don't watch his content, nothing like that. But I am, to a large extent, familiar with the Manosphere. Maybe a bit, not so much nowadays. Before TikTok type of content popped off, I was kind of more familiar with the Manosphere, but it was a bit different back in the 2010s. It's changed a lot since now. It's a lot more clickbaity. Not that it wasn't back then, but now it's just gone off the rails in that sense. Back to the actual documentary. Okay, so the way this documentary is structured is we go section by section or influencer by influencer. Louis Theroux spends like a day or two with them and asks them questions while they're filming content or doing stuff related to, the influencing. He's trying to be friendly with them, gain their trust, so to speak. And they, for the most part, correspond appropriately, at least in the beginning. Then once he starts asking some more like whether it be deep questions or questions regarding something like, oh, I heard you had a criminal case and something like that. Well, then that's when the vibe starts to change and the influencers now, he's basically antagonized them at this point. So maybe some of them start to troll him or start to push back a little bit. But before we even get to that part, usually in each section with each influencer, there's like a few minutes where they humanize them, give a little bit of background information on these people, maybe even show some childhood pictures, that kind of stuff. But always you can tell that the lens or that the focus of this is to somehow make them look bad. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that there is like a sort of thesis in that sense, even if it's unspoken, that this is just a bad thing, the whole manosphere, or at least like the most mainstream parts of the manosphere, and that is a negative thing inherently. And so if we start off with that perspective and that thesis, does the documentary achieve to make these people look bad? I would say yes, but also it could have also been a lot more extensive. Although I think that the length of the actual documentary it's fine, but it also could have been a documentary series where you do an episode with this influencer, then a second one with this other one, and this other one. But the way they went about it was just making basically 1 hour and a half movie. And I feel like there's almost too much to unpack here. So I'm trying to be a bit more concise. But basically, I enjoyed the documentary in terms of entertainment because while it is clear that Louis Theroux comes into this with a certain perspective, while Louis Theroux is looking to somehow expose them, they are, on the other hand, looking to not just dunk on him, so to speak, but to also use this documentary in order to gain more followers and go viral and all that stuff. And to be honest, in the end, it seems that both sides achieved what they want. And in that way, I think that everybody's a winner. And at the same time, everybody's a loser because Louis Theroux achieves what he wants. The influencers somehow achieve what they want. And the audience, if you come in here kind of like hating the manosphere, you will still leave having just like seen exactly what you thought you would see. And if you hate people that, if you're like those anti-matrix type of people, again, you'll see kind of like this mainstream type of documentary making where, oh yeah, look at these bad guys. They're so bad. It's like everybody gets what they want. It's like we're all just hamsters in a wheel in this sense, which is it's the same thing. I feel like you achieve nothing with this, but if the point is entertainment, then maybe you did achieve something. To be honest, it's similar to how, all those female OnlyFans girls on Fresh and Fit, that they go despite knowing that they're just going to be insulted and degraded and all that stuff, they go there because they want the clout, so they're willing to put up with that. I kind of feel like most of the influencers in the documentary kind of knew that was going to happen, and so tried to make the best of it somehow. So that's when we get to the anti-Semitism and all that stuff, which I think that wasn't really like foreshadowed as much in the beginning, and it just kind of dropped on you as an audience member. The documentary does not like acknowledge like the merit or whether or not those arguments have merit. They just dismiss them. I feel like that part was kind of just thrown in there because they noticed that they hadn't really been doing that good of a job to make them come off as these abhorrent people. So there's like, okay, let's throw this dangerous stuff in there. Because up until then, the worst thing that they had shown about these influencers, other than the cloud chasing and the doing things just for content and to go viral and the selling programs to make money and all that stuff, the worst thing was when they interviewed a couple of their girlfriends or wives and kind of inquired about their relationships and, oh, do you agree with this? It seems like you're not so comfortable with this. And the thing about that is if you do that with any couple in the world, you could be able to make any one of the spouses look bad. Like, hey, so who pays for everything? Hey, who sends good morning texts? Hey, does she ever do this for you? Hey, does he ever do this to you? Do you ever fight? Who usually calms down when you calms down things when you argue, stuff like that. You can make anyone look like they're in an abusive relationship. But again, it's not to justify the influencers. Sometimes I think that they do have very contradictory messaging. Uh, Lots of them espouse like traditional values and they don't live a traditional lifestyle. And not all of them. Some of them are just more kind of down to earth. So it's not just like a one size fits all. Like it's a case by case thing. Another thing that happens in the documentary that I want to touch upon is that that online is very famous. These kind of like PDF setups where they text like some dude and get them to think that they're talking to a girl who is underage, and they meet up and then they beat him up or they make him eat dog food or something. That happens in the documentary, and Louis Theroux quickly calls it out, says, "Isn't that just assault? Like, how do you know that? Where's the law and order? All that stuff." And I agree with that completely. I hate that type of content. I hate that it's so popular nowadays. This YouTuber doesn't appear in the documentary. He's one of the most popular ones to do that. Vitaly, I've always despised that dude. To be honest, back this dude has been doing this type of stuff or this type of content since like the early 2010s, since like 2013. And I despised his content back then. But basically, he did the same thing, and the guy turned out to be innocent. He didn't even know she was underage because what they do is I think they get on dating apps and they mark their age as 18 years old. And then when they message them, eventually they're like, oh, but I'm actually 14 years old, not really 18. But I think they stupidly forgot to do that part. And so the dude was just thought he was meeting up with an 18-year-old. And, I think they were beating him up or berating him. Basically, they humiliated him. And I don't know, they're liable to get sued. So yeah, that's not the way you go about doing things. So that's just a parenthesis. Also, I just like to add that the difference between sometimes they switch between obviously the Netflix cameras and they show images, excerpts from the streams from these influencers, and it's just the difference in quality. It's obvious that Netflix is gonna have better equipment, but just to see it like in real time, like side by side, it's like wow. I mentioned that because even Thoreau mentions it at the beginning of the film. He arrives to a TikToker's house and there's like he mentions, oh, those are some really big cameras. Yeah, we're actually the real deal. And so just that comment, I think right off the bat, you're kind of like belittling the influencers, and that makes them look good because now it's as if, they're actually just people who started from the bottom, just they're trying to make it in this world. And here you come with your corporate nepotist crew and you're doing your stuff for Netflix and all that stuff. So you kind of, it seems arrogant. It's hard not to feel sympathy for anybody who just started in their room talking to a cheap camera. But if nothing else, the documentary was an entertaining watch.